All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to dig into a statement from one of history's most important thinkers. A statement that, honestly, sounds completely backwards. It turns everything we think we know about life and death completely upside down.
To die is gain. Just let that sink in for a second. We live in a world that is terrified of death, right? It's seen as the biggest loss possible. And here's this guy calling it a win. How does that even work? It's a huge paradox, and it gets right to the heart of what he believed. And that's the puzzle we're going to solve together today.
So you have to ask, right? Who thinks like that? Was this someone who just hated life, who was just totally disconnected from reality? To figure that out, we have to try and see the world through his eyes. And we've got to start with the man himself.
To really get this, we have to understand the brutal reality of the person who said it. Because this way of thinking wasn't dreamed up in some comfortable library. Oh no, it was forged in the fire.
I mean, just look at this list. This is what the man went through. He was constantly in and out of prison. He was whipped 5 separate times, beaten with rods, stoned and literally left for dead, shipwrecked 3 times. We're talking about a life of constant danger, sleepless nights, hunger, and pain. So yeah, his perspective on death clearly wasn't coming from an easy life. It had to come from somewhere else entirely.
And here's what's so telling about his character. You'd think after all of that, his biggest complaint would be, everything hurting. But he says his greatest daily burden was something else, his deep concern for all the churches, the communities he was trying to build. His focus was totally outward, on his mission, not inward on his own suffering. And that right there, that's our first big clue to his mindset. Okay, so let's get into the big idea here, because Paul's entire perspective on life and death, it all comes from this one huge, all-encompassing worldview. It's a framework that changes, well, pretty much everything.
He saw all of human history as part of a giant cosmic conflict called the Great Controversy. But forget about swords and shields. This wasn't a physical war. It was a spiritual struggle, a war of ideas. In his mind, the real battlefield was the human heart, and the weapons were things like love versus fear or mercy versus betrayal.
And you can see the two arsenals laid out pretty clearly here. One side's playbook, criticism, betrayal, fear, peer pressure, all that stuff that tears people down. But the other side's weapons are completely different. They fight back with love, mercy, peace, kindness. It's a whole other kind of warfare.
Now here is the absolute game changer in this entire worldview. For Paul, the outcome of this great war, it's not even up for debate. He believed the decisive final victory was already won at the cross. So even though the daily struggles are real and the conflict is still going on, the ultimate winner has already been declared. And that changes everything about how you fight the battles today. So, if you believe you're in a war that's already been won, how does that change your view on death? Well, it completely flips the script. Suddenly, death isn't the big, scary enemy to be feared. It becomes something else.
Now, a lot of people think that when you die, your soul just zips right up to heaven for a conscious experience. But Paul's writings point to a different idea, that death is more like a deep, dreamless sleep. He says the dead know nothing. They're simply resting, unconscious, until the resurrection when Christ returns. Remember the story of Lazarus? Jesus didn't say he was in paradise. He said he was asleep and that he was going to wake him up.
And this is the key to that whole to die is gain idea. Think about it. If death is a dreamless sleep where you have no sense of time passing, then for Paul, the very instant he closes his eyes for the last time, the very next thing he'll be aware of is seeing the final victory. It's like pressing fast forward and skipping right to the end of the story. It's an instant leap from all this struggle to the ultimate triumph.
And you can literally feel him wrestling with this, right here in his own words. He says he's hard-pressed, torn. Part of him has this deep desire to depart, to take that instant leap to victory, which he calls far better. But then there's the other part, the part that knows it's more important for him to stick around for the people he's serving. For him, the mission was bigger than his personal desire for release.
So if life is a mission in this huge cosmic war, what does that mean for how people should act together? Well, that question leads directly to a really practical and urgent idea: unity.
See, in this framework, unity isn't just a nice, fluffy idea about everyone getting along. It's a strategic necessity. It's a matter of survival. If you're fighting a war of ideas, what's the fastest way to lose? Infighting. Internal division is basically self-sabotage. A group that's fighting itself can't possibly stand against outside pressure. And Paul even lays out a kind of roadmap for how to build this kind of strength. It's a really logical flow. It all starts with the individual, right? You have to first live like a citizen of heaven.
And that behavior, humility, mercy, that allows you to actually strive together with other people. And when you get that, when you're all pulling in the same direction, that's where you find real unity. And that's what makes you fearless.
So what does that really mean, living as a citizen of heaven? What does it look like day to day? Well, it's all about these core ideas: being a peacemaker, loving your enemies, acting with justice and mercy, walking humbly. In his mind, these aren't just abstract virtues to make you a good person. They're the practical, boots-on-the-ground tactics you need to be effective in the mission.
Okay, let's pull all these threads together. Because what we've been exploring isn't just a random collection of beliefs. It's a single, powerful, and incredibly consistent worldview that shaped everything Paul did and thought.
And you can see right here how it all just locks into place. Life gets reframed as a mission field in a spiritual war. Suffering isn't pointless anymore. It's an expected part of the fight. Death isn't the end. It's just a temporary sleep before the big win. In unity, that becomes the core strategy for success. It all just clicks.
And when you see this whole picture, we can go right back to where we started. That paradox, it's completely solved. To live as Christ simply means to stay here and keep serving the mission. And to die as gain means you get to instantly experience the final victory. Inside this worldview, it's the most logical statement you could possibly make.
So that leaves us with one last big question for ourselves. We just spent all this time unpacking Paul's worldview, but it kind of forces you to look in the mirror. Because no matter what you believe, how you view your own end will always define how you live your life right now. It's a question we're chewing on.